Okay, a theme, Psalm 119, verse 160. Thy word is true from the very beginning. This is a key thing we need to keep in mind as we look forward with this issue of design and everything else as well. And good reminder of Paul's warning to the Apostle Paul's warning to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 20, beware of false science, it leads you astray. Now, I was using this Bible verse with the school kids that I was teaching earlier today, and I had to remind them it's really very useful to actually learn a little bit of Latin and Greek, particularly in relating certain things to the world around you, because if you open up your old King James Bible in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 20, it uses that word science. Beware of science falsely so called. And you'll find that the word science is simply the old Greek word for knowledge. Beware of false science, beware of false knowledge, beware of false information, it will lead you astray. Of course, the flip reverse of that is that true science points you to Christ. Oh, I won't save you, but it is the big flashing beacon pointing you towards Jesus Christ. So make sure you actually are able to properly define and recognize false science versus true science. And it really comes down to this question. Who is your authority? Is it God's unchanging word, or is it man's constantly evolving theories? A little bit of a challenge for you tonight. Okay, a question. What is hydrogen? Again, I love giving this question to students because they come up with wonderful answers like, oh, it's the lightest element, it's the most common element, it's only made up of 2 parts where most atoms and elements are made up of 3, right? You know, your protons, neutrons, and electrons. It's extremely explosive and all this kind of stuff. Of course, if you are a secular atheist evolutionist, then hydrogen is something far more spectacular. Hydrogen is a colorless, odorless gas. It's just hot air that, given enough time, can actually turn into people. A colorless, odorless gas that, given enough time, can turn into every physical, material, and organic and non-organic thing in the universe. You see, the atheistic solution is that when time is the hero of the plot, God is simply not needed. He's not required. I mean, let's face it, if your naked singularity, given enough time, can turn into every element and turn into every structured and designed and undesigned thing here in the universe, then they've got no need for a God in the slightest. And we actually dealt with some of this in our history lesson we did with Standing for Truth. The origin of deep time, the origin of evolution, where the idea really came from, and the whole anti-God basis of it. And the argument was throw enough time at it and anything can actually happen. Okay, what is evolution? Here it is. In the beginning, there was a big bang. Molecules, all by themselves, came out of the naked singularity and diversified from hydrogen into other molecules. Molecules came together all by themselves to form microbes. Microbes continued to evolve and change all by themselves in order to form monsters like the dinosaurs, and then you continue to evolve until you get man today and beyond. From nature to nurture, evolution all by itself. Here's another example. Death and struggle over millions of years, amoebas become ape-like, become man, all by themselves. There is no intelligence required. And evolution is anything that can happen by itself. Only natural processes are involved, and no outside intelligence is required. This is your definition of evolution. Of course, the thing we like to remind people is if you're looking for evidence of design, if you're looking for evidence of creation, you're not looking for evidence of time, you're actually looking for evidence of a process that can actually create things before they simply fall apart. Some practical examples. What is a guitar? It's a 100% musical object made out of 100% non-musical wood. I mean, if you walk up to a tree and you start strumming it, you'll find it difficult to get all the notes and the chords that you would get out of a guitar, right? And yet it's made of the same thing. A guitar is a 100% musical object made out of 100% non-musical wood. Somebody who existed before the tree, or before the guitar rather, somebody who was not part of the guitar, somebody who was cleverer than the guitar, actually made wood do what wood does not do by itself. craft itself into a musical instrument. Okay, recognizing creation. Dr. Chris DiCarlo from Harvard University, who was debating John Mackay, who was, of course, not with us tonight, but has said this rather interesting quote when challenged about what a creation is. How would you actually recognize a creation if it came up and slapped you in the face? The answer is a creation is something that cannot happen by itself, according to Dr. Chris DiCarlo. Okay, so when we're looking for evidence of a creation, when we're looking for evidence of a design, and we've looked at lots of examples of design tonight with what Diane's been talking about, we're looking for evidence of something that cannot happen by itself, as opposed to evolution, which can happen by itself. The principle, a guitar has the end product of the guitar, rather, has properties that do not come from the stuff that it's made of, the wood, therefore it is a design. Somebody who existed before the guitar, somebody who's not part of the guitar, and somebody who is far smarter than the guitar actually made the wood do what wood does not do by itself. A creation is something that cannot happen by itself. The end product has properties that do not come from the stuff that it's made from. Now we've got a formula for design. We're looking for evidence of a product which has properties which do not come from the actual physical materials it's made of. And you are already brilliant at recognizing this kind of stuff. And a creation always proves that somebody who is not part of it, somebody who existed before it, and somebody who is far smarter than it actually created something. So some more practical examples, ones that you can easily recognize. What is a car? A car is a 100% moving object made out of 100% non-moving parts. I mean, it's metal and oil, and it's some rubber, which comes from trees, and you've got some copper in there, which comes from the ground, and you've got some glass, which comes from silica, which comes from sand, and all by itself, those individual components do not make a moving object that is a car. However, put them together in the right order, put them together in the right pattern, put them together by an intelligent creator, and you end up with a product that has properties that do not come from the material constituent parts. It's a 100% moving object made out of 100% non-moving parts. What's a jumbo jet? It's a 100% flying object made out of 100% non-flying parts. Again, the individual components do not by themselves inherently contain the properties of a jumbo jet. It requires somebody with intelligence, or in the case of a jumbo jet, lots of people with intelligence, to actually put them together in the right order and to craft and create and turn them into something that can fly. All right, let's step it up a gear. What's a computer code? I mean, I'm using a computer code right now in my laptop in front of me. Sam's using it, Diane's using it, most of you are probably using it if you're watching this on a phone or a laptop or a computer. What is a computer code? Well, it's ones and noughts. A computer code is a 100% meaningful result made from a 100% meaning-free source. Ones and noughts do not mean anything in themselves unless an intelligent person has assigned meaning to them. And the standard meaning that's assigned to them is one and naught, so one or nothing. Yet if you take those ones and those noughts and you put them together in such a way that you actually code for something, you then sell Microsoft and become a billionaire, like Mr. Bill Gates did. You see, a computer code that's inside this computer or anything else is a 100% meaningful result made from 100% meaning-free source. It requires intelligence to actually construct it. Remember what a creation is. A creation is something that cannot happen by itself. A computer code cannot happen by itself. It requires parameters and it requires properties which do not come from the inherent materials of the ones and the noughts. In fact, the even creation of the ones and the noughts requires intelligence in the first place. It is a creation for sure. The end product has properties that do not come from the stuff that it's made of, therefore it is a creation. And therefore, you pay the creator his due. That's why I have a little symbol here on my laptop that says Microsoft Windows 10. Interesting. It's paying the creator his due. That's why when you drive the car down the road and it says Ford on the front of it, you're paying the creator its due. Make sure that you pay the creator his due for the design that he has made. That's why we have copyright laws in this country. That's why we have court case after court case over, all this copyright infringement and so on and so forth. All right, step it up another gear. What is DNA? It's a 100% coded substance made of 100% non-coded parts. DNA is made up of sugars, it's made up of phosphates, made up of carbons. Most of that you probably ate for your breakfast, and it didn't contain any intelligent coding. Yet put it together in the right way, put it together in the correct pattern, put it together under design, and DNA creates a 100% coded substance made from 100% non-coding parts with an inbuilt mechanism to make copies of itself. I mean, that'd be wonderful if a car could do that. The original DNA shows all the evidence of a pre-existent intelligent creator. In fact, DNA is designed to not evolve. Yes, you heard me correctly. DNA is designed to not evolve. Evolution, one of the driving factors of evolution is mutations. Mutations mixed with natural selection are the two driving factors, supposedly, of evolution. Yet your DNA has an inherent inbuilt mechanism to stop itself from evolving. Now, yes, we live in a fallen world, and yes, mutations do happen all the time, and some of those mutations can be absolutely catastrophic, but the reality is there is an inbuilt mechanism to stop you from mutating. You are designed to not evolve. In fact, you are designed to reproduce after your kind, just as God told you were back in the beginning, just as God told every other creature and plant and organism that they were back in the beginning. The original DNA shows all the evidence of a pre-existent, intelligent creator. Remember what a creation always proves. Somebody who is not part of it, somebody who existed before it, and somebody who is far, far smarter than it actually made it do what it doesn't do by itself. Therefore, you pay the creator his due. Who is the creator? The creator is Jesus Christ. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Implication, the Word is not only an eternal Word, he is equal to God, and he is God. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made through the Word, and without the Word, nothing was made that was made. So the Word, who is not only equal to God, who is God, he is also the creator of all things. And skip down to verse 14 of John chapter 1, and the Word, who is equal to the God, who is the creator of all things, became flesh and dwelt among us, and his name is Jesus Christ. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus Christ is the creator of all things. And you see this reiterated throughout Scripture, both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Just think of Colossians 1:16. Not only were all things made by Jesus Christ, they were made for Jesus Christ. And in him all things consist, all things are held together. He's not only our creator, it wasn't only created for him, he's also the sustainer of all things. He's the one who holds all things together. One Deadly Bite. It's a program that I do on venom, but in this bit we're not going to focus so much on the venom, we're more going to focus on the design of snakes, because I love snakes. I worked as a zookeeper for several years. It was an absolute joy to be able to work with these creatures, and it's still a fascination that I have today. I think they're absolutely beautiful. This is one of the North American corn snakes. Absolutely gorgeous, stunning colors. Beautiful creatures. We had great fun working with these things and designing enclosures and making sure that they were healthy and happy and everything else. All right, here's one of those North American garter snakes, and you can see that he's sticking his tongue out at you. He's not being rude. Most people will know that snakes use their tongue as part of their sense of smell. Now, they don't technically smell with their tongues. They technically smell the same thing that you and I smell with, which is technically our brains. You see, when we smell, we have odor particles in the air which go up into the back of our nose to olfactory cells which send the information to our brain, and our brain then interprets those smells. However, a snake does things ever so slightly differently. But one thing you'll notice is, he's got a forked tongue. Now, most of you know that snakes have got a forked tongue. I wonder how many of you have asked the question before, why has a snake got a forked tongue? And something we like to remind people here in creation research is that if you don't ask the right questions, you'll never get the right answers. Here's a nice little diagram of a snake. You've got the Jacobson's organ, which is connected by a nerve to the brain. A snake sticks its tongue out, it waves its tongue around, it captures odor particles on the air, brings it back in, and it sticks it into that Jacobson's organ, part of the brain. And it sends those odor particles directly into its brain. Now, the Jacobson's organ and the snake's sense of smell is so spectacular. Researchers suggested that they can smell up to month-old smells, which is just wonderful. It's incredible. And the forked tongue is actually to give it a 3D picture of the smells around it. So one side of the fork is for one side of the Jacobson's organ, the other side is for the other side of the Jacobson's organ. It's actually able to build up a picture of smell in its surroundings. Absolutely incredible. Now here's Whisper, one of our snakes, who is currently munching on a lovely rat. Now, in today's world, snakes eat meat. And you may want to come back to the Q&A session to talk about how could snakes have survived in a pre-fallen world, how, why or when did venom kind of come about, and all these kind of questions. But the point we're making here is about the design of how a snake eats, because snakes are unable to chew. You can see here that Whisper is swallowing the rat whole, and the rat is several times larger than her head is under normal conditions. And of course, you ask most people, how do snakes manage to do this? And the number one answer is snakes dislocate their jaws. Well, they actually don't. Snakes don't dislocate their jaws. It's a bit of a misnomer. They don't actually have jaws for which to dislocate. What they do have, however, is a quadruped bone. And you will also be able to see down there by the chin that their chin is not actually joined by any kind of bone. Unlike our chin, we have a nice hard bony chin. The snakes don't. They're actually joined by a ligament, a flap of skin, which folds up into their mouth. And the quadruped bone is actually used as an extender. So rather than unhinging their bones, they simply are able to stretch their mouths really, really wide and stretch their bottom jaws out really, really wide as well. They essentially have an extending jaw. They don't dislocate it. But it's a great piece of design to allow snakes to swallow their food in one go, to actually swallow things whole, because snakes simply can't chew. And they can cope with some really rather sizable things as well. In fact, they can go to some really extremes. And some, hey, this is one of your Australian rock pythons swallowing what is likely some type of wallaby marsupial there. Huge, great big creature. Of course, ask yourself this question. As remarkable as it is that the snake is swallowing this size of creature, if you were to shove that quantity of food down your throat, would you be able to breathe? Answer, no. So how is the snake breathing? Because this snake can, well, it can take sometimes a couple of hours to actually swallow a creature of this size whole. So how is the snake actually breathing? Well, the snake has another wonderful piece of design. You can see down there he's got a little tube. When this snake opens its mouth at you, there it is a little bit clearer on one of our corn snakes. Oops. What it actually happens is this snake, this little tube, is essentially a bypass valve. Similar to if you have a bypass valve in plumbing or electrics. It actually runs down its throat, around the back of its head, and joins the lungs from the top. So when the snake is swallowing its huge amount of food, it's actually able to stick this little tube out of the side of its mouth, and it's able to continue breathing absolutely fine. And in fact, they will actually move their jaws sort of back and forth, pulling the creature or the food into its mouth. And it's able to do that with no issue at all, because it can stick this little tube out the side and carry on breathing. Now, you do have to ask the question, excuse me, how did these incredibly complex organisms evolve perfectly at the correct time? Because you see, if you have a snake, but he doesn't have the sense of smell, then he can't find his food. If you have a snake, but he has a sense of smell, but he doesn't have the brilliantly designed jaw system, he can find his food, but he can't eat it. If he has the sense of smell and he has the jaw system, but he doesn't have the breathing tube, then he can find his food, he can start to eat his food, but he can't actually, well, he'll die because he can't breathe halfway through. And I haven't even started talking about the fact that if you were to shove that amount of food in you, you would simply explode. So you need to have a stomach and a digestive system that's able to not only stretch the entire skin open, but also able to cope with that volume of food and digest that volume of food over a large period of time. See, all of these things have to be in place at the right time in order to work. In other words, design has nothing to do with time. Time simply destroys. Intelligence creates. It's got nothing to do with time, but everything to do with a process. You're looking for a process to design. I mean, you know this because of work, industry, right? Time is money. So what do? You sack the foreman you've got, you hire a foreman who's able to implement a better process, and therefore your creation gets done quicker and therefore gets done more efficiently. Not time, but process. How would you recognize a design if you saw one? I mean, we've been using examples of stone tools and rocks and hand axes, and you remember what our definition was from earlier when we were using this hand axe or this stone axe. A design is something that has properties that do not come from the materials that it's made of, therefore it's a design. Stone by itself does not carve itself into a beautiful axe. Stone by itself does not inset itself into wood that's carved beautifully so it holds comfortably in your hand. It does not get deerskin twine and twine it around so that the axe doesn't split. It doesn't get pine pitch that's mixed with beeswax and inserted into the gaps so that it holds the axe into place. This is by sure a design, and you can recognize designs, and now you're actually able to define it. A design is something that has properties that do not come from the materials that it's made of. A design has a designer. A designer is a creator, and you must pay the creator his due. Very briefly, as a side note, one deadly bite. Let's briefly deal with the topic of venom, because there's a misnomer today that venom is bad, and you can, if you've ever been bitten by a snake, you probably would think that venom is bad for sure. No, venom isn't bad. Venom is a digestive system. We've got a brilliant new research that's going on where they're actually doing mass spec tests on venom and looking into the origin of venom as well. And one thing's for sure, it's a digestive mechanism. So your rattlesnake like this is using its venom to digest. Now, it just so happens when it injects it into a creature, it happens to kill it as well. So it's a good design which is being implemented in a bad way. It's a good design in the beginning, designed to digest, because you find lots of herbivores also have venom as well. Herbivore lizards will have mild forms of toxin, which is very similar to rattlesnake venom, and they are 100% vegetarian. So they only eat plants, they're herbivores, and you'll find they use their venom in order to be able to digest their food. So in the beginning, everything was very good. Venom was used to digest. Now it's being used to kill. It's a good design being used in a bad way. And you can see this example. Here's one of our green iguanas, and I used this example for our kids earlier because not only do green iguanas have wonderful, beautiful, sharp teeth that sink into your flesh, as I have experienced. So the point being that the only thing you can tell from the teeth of an animal is how an animal eats, not what an animal eats, because they are sharp, serrated, backward-pointing teeth in a 100% vegetarian creature. But both green iguanas and other lizards, like the bearded dragons, are actually all venomous. And they are predominantly, if not 100%, vegetarians. They use their venom for digesting. One deadly bite. Now, it's not from the snake. It's one good design that's actually gone wrong. If you want to know the real deadly bite, it's the one where Adam actually took a bite out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thereby cursing the world, and thereby meaning that many people now today are scared of snakes simply because they are very, very dangerous in today's world. The point that I made, how did all of this evolve, venom or otherwise, from nothing, without intelligence, all at the same or the correct time. Remember what evolution is? And evolution is anything that can happen by itself. Only natural processes are involved and no outside intelligence is required. What is a creation? A creation is anything that cannot happen by itself. The end result has properties that do not come from the original materials, and outside intelligence is always required. And a creation always proves someone who was not part of it, someone who was greater than it, actually made these materials do what it doesn't do by itself. That's what you're looking at when you're looking at evidence of a creation. Well, that just about brings us to the end of my little session that we talk about in terms of the evidence of design. I'm going to just escape like that, come back to the screen like this. Good stuff. Yep, we're back. Lovely. We've still got some people with us. Thank you very much. That's great. Let's see if we've got any questions or any other points or anything else that's come up, and we can maybe move on to some of the standing for truth questions.
We've had no questions come in on anything so far. We have had a point, well,